Welcome to A Brief History of Conspiracy. Just very quickly, going to add our full Anunnaki video on now. The second full Anunnaki videos come in the next few days. And I just really wanted to get out there and please subscribe and like this video. And more importantly, leave a comment. We want to really build a community here. We want people of a similar thinking to come together, talk about this subject. Because, you know, we're trying to do this and build a chronology of conspiracy and mystery in order through time, and as you can imagine, it's a really big job. So, you know, come on, we need you. Help us out. Like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll speak soon. Thanks. So, the Anunnaki came to Earth about 400,000 years ago, so that's where we are in the chronology, from a planet called Nibiru.
Yes, Nibiru supposedly being the 10th planet orbiting around our sun.
Planet X.
Planet X.
This is, we've discussed this in previous episodes. If you go back and look at our moon episodes, we've already sort of chatted about this a little bit. But basically, yeah, this planet's on a 3,600 year orbit, a really
elliptical orbit on a different plane around our sun.
Yeah. So it goes way the fuck out and then comes back, and it's not. All the rest of our planets are on quite a plane. We think that might be on a completely different plane to the rest of the planets, don't we?
Yeah, and it was backed up by some evidence from the NASA IRAS satellite in 1984, which detected something of 4 to 8 Earth masses out there perturbing the orbits of.
Yeah, we've been looking for this for years, haven't we? Because, I mean, is it Neptune's got a bit of a wobble to its orbit that we've never been able to understand, and we thought initially it was Pluto, then they actually did the math, and they go, well, like, Pluto's not big enough, and not a planet, apparently. I miss Pluto.
It's very spherical though, isn't it, Pluto?
Yes, it looks like a planet to me. So the idea is that they came to Earth 400,000 years ago, basically looking for gold. They came to South Africa, where we've got all the gold mines still today.
Yes.
Set up a city called Eridu, or Earth Station 1, which sounds cooler. I want to, you know, if I had a thing, I would have Earth Station 1.
Is that the ruins in Zimbabwe?
Yeah.
I believe that refers to, isn't it?
It also sounds like a Jerry Anderson TV show.
Yeah.
Thunderbirds are go at Earth Station 1.
It does very much so, actually, doesn't it?
Yeah. So then we're basing really this on the Sitchin version of this story. There are other versions we'll discuss a little later. So yeah, the Anunnaki, sometimes also called the Nephilim, the sons of gods and daughters of men, that is supposed to translate to.
Yeah, I mean, that's how the Bible refers to a race of giants, doesn't it, as the Nephilim, which is believed to be the same as the Anunnaki.
I think, yeah, as we go through the story, we'll really talk about how there are a lot of similarities between basically what we call the Anunnaki and what we consider as like angels in some ways. Or maybe that the angels in the Bible are a metaphor for this alien species.
Kind of, yeah. Fallen angels, weren't they? With the sons of gods that came to Earth and mated with the daughters of men. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it's described in the Bible in relation to the Nephilim.
And as we go through the story, we see those connections. And the Anunnaki actually is supposed to come from An, at the start, is supposed to mean God of Heavens, and they're supposed to be the descendants from the God of Heaven. So, I mean, that is really what angels are, and the angels were made by God.
The descendants of the gods of the sky, isn't it? Yeah. An being the sky. And
exactly, yeah. And they're supposed to be, they were decreed by An to be the, decide the fate of man. So, I mean, again, that sounds like angels. Another element of the Anunnaki is that there's supposed to be these 7 judges, and that's another link because there was these 7 archangels.
Yes.
So there are these. You can see why people sort of started making these connections, I think. Oh, okay.
Yeah, numbers are very important, I suppose, when they crop up in stories and when they're repeated through stories through multiple cultures.
No, exactly, yeah. And I think that gives them more credence when we see them in different.
They tend to relate to the geometry of our planet in some way, shape or form, or of stars they're observing. Or
So the Igigi, who apparently they're not the Anunnaki, but they seem to be related, and they seem to live thousands of years as well, were being used to dig all the gold up. They got pissed off because they didn't like spending thousands of years in mines. Weird. So they had a civil war. Anunnaki bashed them. I
suppose it's possible that there was another humanoid being called the Igigi that wasn't directly the Anunnaki living here at that point in time. Perhaps not now. But perhaps back then.
There seems to be little information about this or what exactly the Igigi were. There's other myths about the Igigi being the gods of the heavens, where the Anunnaki are the gods of the underworld, but they seem to be always related as old gods. But we don't really know. It seems to be vague and seems to have different. This is the big problem with it. A lot of the stuff with the Anunnaki is that we've got different stories.
Yes. And the timescales that you're looking at is going back so far, much further than recorded history. Nothing's going to have a lot of...
This War of the Olden Gods is supposed to have happened 380,000 years ago. I don't know where that number comes from. Well, it comes from the Sumerian texts and things apparently, but I don't know how they calendared that.
No, nor do I. I imagine there's a lot of argument over the exact chronology of this as well.
So then, Enki, who was one of the first Anunnaki to come here, and she's supposed to be like as a female, she's supposed to be like a doctor figure or a scientist. She decided, well, the Igigi are gone, we still want the gold, we're not digging it up, so we will create a genetically engineered species to dig the gold up for us.
And was creating some spliced creatures, such as our mythical creatures, as minotaurs.
As well, they went down into they still exist now in the underworld. And like minotaurs and all this sort of thing. Anything basically you think of from myth, Enki, that's just Enki playing around. According to this, some of these stories. And then she focused on Neanderthal man. So
in this chronology then, so they took Neanderthal man and
spliced
some of their genes in and upgraded him into perhaps us. And then
initially we were all sterile. So no sex.
Supposedly, we were all sterile. And
they actually programmed in our love for gold. Because we love gold. and that kind of explains that to me, because I don't like gold. I think it's ugly. You know, people are dripping in bloody...
gold.
I don't think it's a nice looking metal at all. But we seem obsessed with it.
It does make sense if you think if they were here to mine gold and they created us to mine the gold for them, all the gold that we did mine they would come and collect from us. So gold would still be very scarce and rare. So any that they did let you keep
would become even more valuable.
But I just think more valuable. Actually, hence the royalty would adorn themselves with it to show that the gods had given them some of the gold, perhaps.
But also, if we're programmed so that they could bugger off and leave us to it, and then come back, and then they just go, thank you. If they actually physically program into us this love for gold, then that would kind of make sense as well. That we would adorn ourselves with it because we're programmed to love it. But that kind of makes sense to me. Out of all the gold that we dig up today, we use over a third of it in jewellery, a third of it in technology, and that's only really become in the last 30 years or so. Before then, almost all the gold we dig up was used for jewellery. Yeah. And then there's the other third is used for other stuff, just whatever. But it doesn't really in lots of ways make sense that we have such a obsession with gold, particularly a few hundred years ago, before we realised how actually it's got really good properties in computers and things like this. We weren't using it for that. We just use it pretty much as money. It doesn't really make sense. Why were we so obsessed with it?
I think gold coins were like more what's the word, like, they weren't frequently used in the past. Most coinage was silver. Again, that probably relates to the fact that the gods came to take the gold. So if to trade in a currency, you wouldn't want to use what you were coming here to mine.
No, but my point is it was valuable.
Oh yeah, it was valuable.
It was valuable. But then its value doesn't make sense in lots of ways.
Because it only has...
100 years ago or 200 years ago, why was there a gold rush in California?
Yeah, it only has a value based on what society deems it,
because people liked it as
jewelry.
Now it's got more value because we realise it's a really good insulator. It's good at
a really good conductor.
Things. Yeah, good conductor. So we use it more now, but back then, I don't know why we were doing it.
Yeah, it does have some interesting properties. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the Anunnaki then, and through Enki, created this slave race, humans, to gold, and initially infertile. We got the Adamu that you mentioned.
Yeah, supposedly that's where the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis comes from, isn't it? And this links into
link to the Bible.
The Adamu species being created by
and there's a place in South Africa called Adam's Calendar that still exists today, that they think is one of the oldest sites.
Yeah, another Stonehenge type place.
Yeah, it's very much like Stonehenge.
Celestial alignments to solstice.
And they think it might be as old as Göbekli Tepe. We're talking 10, 12,000 years old potentially.
Or possibly even older.
Even older, yeah.
So that links in. And the whole story of Eve being made from the rib of Adam also ties in with the Anunnaki creation story, as supposedly they were infertile, so they would have had to have used Adam and DNA in order to make Eve.
Genetically modified.
And then any further... And that would also explain how the creation story in the Bible, there's very little... There's very little problems from massive amount of inbreeding when you put it to one woman and one man starting everything off. Whereas if you were
no
actually
problem with
doing...
the brothers and sisters, making more babies.
If you were manipulating DNA and creating people artificially in test tubes, then that whole sort of like bottleneck idea in the gene pool doesn't matter. So the whole Adam and Eve and the actual what we know about genetics then starts to make a bit more sense as well.
Well, it's less creepy.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's less. There's less incest going on.
Yes,
which is lovely. We don't like incest, even though there was, mathematically speaking, there must have been a lot of incest in our species, because it just doesn't. There weren't enough of us a few 100,000 years ago.
Yeah, so, or even in the last ice age, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we went down to about 10,000 of us. There was a bit of cousins going on, but I have a genetic thing that I was born with, and a doctor generally asked me, "Your parents cousins?" Oh, they're both from Dorley. It's quite possible. So let's be honest, they're not cousins. We checked. So a lot of the information we're talking about comes from ancient Sumerian texts, Akkadians, this sort of region.
Was it the Akkadians, the Babylonians?
Yeah,
the Assyrians.
Exactly. So these are basically the 4 or 5 cities relatively close to each other. Their myths
in Mesopotamia
mingled, and that region.
They all have the gods. They all have the Anunnaki as the deities, don't they?
They all seem to have slightly different versions of the story, but
and the gods, obviously, names vary, I believe, as well, and
slightly, But the particularly in Sumeria, though, was where a lot of this comes from. They were very good at writing all this stuff down, and they had the list of the kings where they wrote down several generations of these kings that lived for hundreds of even thousands of years, and this stuff was seemed to be recorded as if it was true. It wasn't recorded. It seemed to be a lot of effort to record a myth if they didn't actually believe it. It was stuff that they seemed to have tried to record.
And that ties in with the Bible again, with
Noah was supposed to live for 700 years, was it?
Patriarchs. They supposedly lived for, again, 1,000 years, reigned for 1,000 years, and it's weird that you have more than one culture all reporting that we used to live a lot longer.
And this was because of the
next
next step is where shit really started to go wrong. First of all, I think the Anunnaki decided, well, easiest way of getting a few more human beings is to let them breed. So we started breeding. The next decision was probably a little poorer. And then I said around 100,000 years ago, the Anunnaki started breeding with man. And this is going back to the Nephilim, called the sons of gods and daughters of men. That's where sort of the Nephilim idea comes from. And they were like demigods. If you go Greek mythology, that sort of thing. Demigods. Yeah. Which I think is another link into another type of mythology, that this is a similar thread story, that humans and the gods mating and creating a demigod.
Fallen angels in the Bible, linking, Yeah,
and this then created like a bloodline, which some would say we still see today, because we still have kings and queens that are supposed to be ordained by God.
Yeah, well, supposedly
is this a thing of the bloodline?
Some of these demigods were chosen, weren't they, by the Anunnaki to rule over the rest of man.
Sometimes called the enlightened ones as well, as if they knew something we didn't.
It also explains everything with, like you said, raw bloodlines and direct line back to your creator. I suppose it's a direct bloodline back to the Anunnaki, to what we deemed as
which is then a direct bloodline to God.
Which is why raw bloodlines are so important over the last several 1,000 years for recorded history that we know that they've been.
Again, you could argue it's just that kings had power, so therefore they had control and trust, and people believed these things, and that's how they had the power because people allowed them to have the power.
Yeah.
Or you can believe that people believed they were ordained by God.
Yeah.
They were special. And then they interbred a lot, and our royal family all went.
Yes, there was a lot of inbreeding because of the pure royal bloodlines.
Cousins marrying, Jesus. Because they're only first cousins are all right. They're not blood related. Because we have to go 2 generations. They are blood related. Anyway, never mind.
I suppose that's us not understanding the genetics.
We see in the Sumerian text the double helix sign quite a lot. So this was saying, and they're saying, is that actually proof that the Sumerians knew about genetics? Because our DNA code is this sort of shape, and that's interesting. There's a lot of people argue that there's proof that we're genetically engineered, that we're a hybrid engineered species, because there's like this rhesus negative thing.
Yeah, the rhesus negative blood type is a
which I didn't know until we looked into this. It's actually because of monkeys. I didn't get that, didn't I? I didn't make the connection between. I knew a rhesus monkey was a thing, and I knew rhesus negative was a thing.
So rhesus negative. Well, it just negative blood group just means that you don't have any antigens around your blood cell.
So right. So if you haven't got any antigens around your blood, is this when that triggers your immune system?
Yeah. Well, basically, you can get a situation with a pregnant woman where she could be rhesus negative but have a rhesus positive baby, and her body will reject the infant as though it's a foreign body and just kill it,
which is just crazy.
Because the mother has the antigens but the child doesn't have the antigens,
so the body's immune system literally thinks it's an enemy and rejects it,
kind of, basically.
And so the only other time we've seen this apparently in nature is with the rhesus monkey. So they called it rhesus positive, rhesus negative. I think that's crazy. I looked into this a bit though, and I said a lot of YouTube videos again go and say this doesn't happen in nature ever. Apparently it does, but apparently we've not. I know in dogs there's lots of different blood types, and you do get positive and negative. It's different. It's a different type of. There seems to be lots and lots of different ways blood can be.
Yeah, I imagine there is. But if you think about the multitude of species and how they could all evolve their blood slightly differently and away from.
But the big thing they've just read is that we haven't done a lot of research in this as human beings.
We don't.
Because there's no need to. We've done a lot of research into human beings because we do blood transfusions and things like this, so there's a lot of research going into it. But for animals, that's the only reason that we know about that in dogs is because ridiculous people in America actually spend thousands of pounds on the and dogs are starting to have blood transfusions, so vets did the research. Most other animals, they spend some research in cattle and things, but not a great deal.
So so to state that it doesn't appear in nature at all is also there's new species discovered every day. All right, probably not. Significantly sized new fauna. Mammals.
Yeah, we're not finding
of decent size. We're not finding new big mammals
until we find Sasquatch.
Yeah, we do probably. There probably are the odd species of small like mice type or shrew type.
I think we find a lot of insects and things like that, don't we? Spiders and things like that. We find a lot of that, don't we?
Yeah.
They reckon we wipe out more than we discover every day.
Probably wouldn't be too difficult in terms of the numbers to do an investigation of the entire mammalian group in terms of blood types and positive, negative.
I think
there's only a few hundred, isn't there?
I think it's just a lot of effort that they've done, or any research that's been done has been limited anyway. Because again, we don't do blood transfusions. There's no reason to do a great deal. But that seems to be the argument when I've looked into it. There are other scientists that have said we're actually sea star children, and that we got a lot of our DNA's apparently got a lot of junk DNA. So we've got the DNA that our bodies use, and then it's got a load of stuff that we just don't.
Yeah, but I don't even like that term junk DNA, because by terming some of it junk, you're just terming it, it doesn't matter what that bit does. When really what it means is scientists haven't figured out what that bit does yet.
Well, the mainstream science believed, no, true, but the mainstream believed it's junk DNAs because DNA we used to use and now don't, because we've sort of like fine-tuned our genetic coding. But the flip argument for that is, it's DNA that we don't use yet.
Yeah. On and off switches,
Yeah.
potentially in the sequence, and certain parts of the sequence not being active at present. Yeah.
Well, there's a Dr. Mary Rodwell's done a lot of work. She says she believes a lot of children today are with sort of Asperger's and disorders like this. It is actually just children that certain elements of their DNA has been activated, and when we see savants that are able to do these incredible number counting and things, they say that's actually skills being activated too soon potentially, but that is
kind of makes some sense.
It's alien activation, alien hybridization that's being occasionally activated. There's a Professor Sam Chang from the Human Genome Project who says we're seeing activation of this junk DNA over 1 or 2 generations. That's not evolution, that's too fast. So if we're seeing an increase or an improvement in our DNA, his argument is that because ET's coming and our DNA is starting to activate.
Quite possibly. If they were capable of creating us and manipulating DNA on a probably basis further than we're at today, and it's already incredible what they're starting to be able to do with genetic modification of crops, and they can already splice genes into, so that this is going back a few years even, but they spliced the silk producing gene from a spider into a goat, so that it would produce.
That genuinely terrifies me.
It produces spider silk instead of milk, which is used for Kevlar vests.
Yes,
but it's incredibly strong. So they're already doing this kind of
I said
splicing
if you created a net
animals.
big enough, you could stop a truck with it. If you create a cobweb big enough, it's an incredible material.
Unreal, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, so if you just imagine
spider goats, though, no.
What a species that's a bit further ahead of us can do. Yeah. The realm of possibility
that's the point,
is endless.
Isn't it? If the Anunnaki did put all this genetic coding into us, and they thought ahead, and they've on this 3,600 year orbit, and Nibiru is coming back.
Yep.
It's on its way back. Maybe that coding is starting to activate.
Quite possibly.
We're waiting for their...
Possible, yeah. Who's say no?
And that's actually a little scary. That is a little scary, because what could that genetic coding, once activated, be or do? Does it make us compliant? Does it make us...
I reckon you might be everybody might be telepathic as well, but because of our diet and our continued mistreatment of the pineal gland, basically, the third eye, in the centre of your head, isn't it? Or,
yeah. That's something we're going to talk about a lot in future episodes, isn't it? With the third eye and the Masons and all that sort of thing as well, and the symbology of a lot of our construction through the thousands of years. Yeah.
This is where some people claim they can communicate, don't they, with other beings on another planet? Yeah. Just through telepathic.
Unfortunately, a lot of the evidence, and I'm going to go evidence for Nibiru stuff, is done through people saying that they're telepathic, automatic writing, this sort of thing, and that's what a lot of, there's a woman whose name I forget who actually went through all this and said that is the Nibiru is coming back, and they've been talking to her, and I'm like, I like the idea of it. Okay, we have the power to talk to anyone, but we're going to talk to you, crazy American lady.
Well, yeah, who they want, why and who
she's
they
got
pick.
12 cats. Let's talk to her. I'm not sure about that, but hey, as soon as I start hearing voices, I'm gonna be like, shit. But anyway, if we go back to the story, the Anunnaki, they're mating with humans. We're creating demigods. Everything's hunky dory, except Enlil. Isn't happy.
No, he wanted the demise of humanity.
Yeah. He considered these, particularly the demigods, to be abominations or something. Which again, if we link back into the Bible, the story of why God created the flood. Now, a lot of people think that was because he was wiping out evil. The actual Bible talks about angels and archangels mating with man.
Yes.
And creating a mixed race, a mixed species. And that was what God needed to get rid of. Now, we talk about the morals of God actually wiping out everything. to do that, and I actually made a nun cry once for this argument, so I'm not going to go into it. But I also wonder if God is supposed to be all powerful, why can he just go, I don't like you, and just literally, why did you actually create a flood? It seems to be a bit of a, the Eddie Izzard joke about it is the Etch gets end of the world. You're drawing a thing, you go crossways, no, don't know what that is anymore. I was going to wipe that out and start again. That is the,
yeah.
But that lies into that this Enlil, he didn't like the mixing, and he decided that on Nibiru's next path, that there would be this massive fuck-off flood caused by the gravitational effects of Nibiru.
Nibiru on coming into the inner solar system, and
and they just weren't going to stop it.
Yeah.
And we were nearly wiped out.
Yeah, and then supposedly Enki was the one that wanted to save some of humanity. Supposedly would have been the one that gave the word to Noah to build the ark.
Yeah. And tried to save as many of us as we could.
Yeah, and to save as many of the species.
And interestingly, this has supposedly happened 12,000 years ago, which is an interesting date. Because it's going to be about 3 or 4 episodes away, but we're going to talk about the Younger Dryas event.
Yes.
Where there is significant evidence of big fuck-off floods.
Yes, massive climate change and massive sea level change around the last ice age.
You can see why somebody's gone with a pencil and gone and connected a lot of these stories.
Yes, because there are a lot of points that.
Now there are some where these are a little bit different. In the Akkadian myths, the Anunnaki are the gods of the underworld. The Igigi are the gods of heaven, or the gods of the skies, which is a total flip of what we've already talked about, where the Igigis were seem to be the lower caste of gods, and the Anunnaki were the upper caste. Sometimes the Anunnaki are called the oldest gods.
There's a lot of confusion, isn't there? It is a lot of myth, really, with very lacking evidence.
Do you think though that the different stories or different, particularly when we seem to get different stories from different parts of the world, and we can even argue that some of the Native American myths link into some of this stuff we're talking about. If we talk about that again, we talk about the Hopi tribe, and they talk about their gods that came from under the ground, and there's some arguments say that was that the Anunnaki.
And there's a lot of symbology in Mayan, in the Mayan.
Exactly.
Structures and that shows that they had gods of the underworld, and they believed that the gods lived under.
There's another story. There's a Japanese myth about. Apparently there was a god, and then there was a seven generations of God, and then the 7th generation, and these then caused they would then cause the council or the judges of man, and they then created man, and they delivered him onto a water world, so a world covered in water. They created a land which was Japan, and then they created woman so that we could mate. Then goes into an incredibly sexist part of the story. So in their mythology, first of all, the man and the woman had their little marriage ceremony, and in the ceremony the woman spoke first. They then got jiggy, had a baby, but the baby was deformed. So they scrapped that idea, and they went through another set of ceremonies where the man spoke first. And when the man spoke first, the baby was fine.
Normal.
And Japanese culture is still very much male dominant, female submissive, and we still see that today. But they had this thing of this 7 councils, and it's just this number 7 keeps reappearing.
It's almost like somebody wrote that line in as a method of control at some point during the history of Japanese culture.
But we see the same with the Christian stories. The Adam and Eve story of the snake in Christian mythology. It's totally the woman's fault, and God was a sod about it as well. He then basically said, as punishment, women will be in pain during childbirth, and that was his punishment. What a shit! God is a twat. But But in Islamic tradition, they've got a similar story, and it's pretty much even. We're both to blame. We basically talked each other into it. There's a man and a woman going, let's have a bit of the apple, and the bloke's there going, yeah, why not? Let's have a bit of apple. Which you know a bloke would. A bloke has got no self-control. He's got a naked chick over here, which is definitely distracting him. A snake comes over and goes, have an apple. I'm going, yeah, I'll have an apple. You know he's talking,
distracted.
and then he would so blame her. You know, it's the same with me with the wife. When you go, she'll go left or right. I think it's left. She goes, it's right. I go, okay, then I'll turn right because I don't want an argument. And then when I turn right, I go, I bloody told you when it's wrong. Yeah. We love blaming. You know.
It is. We do have a blame-based culture.
But we're just seeing these. I wonder whether, because we get lots of different versions of the same story from different cultures in different times, you can either argue that removes some of the credence of the story. It makes it less believable because you're saying, well, we're seeing different versions of the same thing, so that contradicts that. Or does it actually give more to it and make it more believable? Because maybe not the stories we've got, because we've got 10,000 years of it being told. It's going to have changed.
Yeah, of course. Chinese whispers. Yeah.
But there's something there.
Yeah, it's when the root of a lot of these stories is the same, even though the details have been tweaked slightly by different cultures at different times, and
yeah, exactly.
That there is some
different understanding, different thing.
It seems like there was some kind of core civilization pre the last Ice Age, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah. There seems to be one
stories
core
then all funneled
religion,
through
one core civilization, one core something that, whether they were called the Anunnaki or not, or the Atlanteans or whatever, there seems to have been something there.
Yeah. Probably.
Now we've got to try and figure out and go through all this and figure out what's bullshit, what's mistaken, what's misunderstood, and get down to something that makes sense. And that's what we're going to do over the next 2-3 episodes.
Or try.
Hey, now I've got more confidence in us than that. I think we're going to do it. Come on, we are going to explain a mystery that's been discovered for no, we're not. We'll do what we can.
Yeah.
So, all right. So thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
I've started doing that at the end of videos, and I need to stop. I did it at the start of my last video. I went, bear with me, and I'm like, I've noticed I've done it, and it's fucking horrific.
Is it?